Welcome back to another episode of the Root of All Evil podcast. A couple weeks ago, Luke released a solo episode where he thought harder about the government shutdown. He made an initial prediction, thought about why that didn't quite work out, and then sharpened that up for a new one. Ultimately, he predicted that the government shutdown will end after the elections pass. He pretty much got it right. That said, though, let's dig further into his predictions a little bit, what motivated them, and what they might mean looking ahead.
It's the root of all evil, of strife and upheaval, but I'm certain
This is tough. I mean, revisiting, I think, one of the biggest mistakes made.
Why do you think it's such a big mistake?
Because, like, the whole, I called it an election year.
For some backstory to the audience here, Luke he thinks his point isn't valid anymore because he said that this is an election year. Or he called it the midterms, but it's a major election year. So I think he's right.
I think the analysis is still sound, but it's just so embarrassing that you got, like, the whole year wrong. That's just, like, basic stuff. That's what's embarrassing. This is like ABC's kind of stuff and just, like, dead wrong.
Well, I mean, hey, people can make mistakes, Luke. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, look, maybe we can turn this around and we can say that, okay, we are forthcoming when we screw up. Did it once with that previous episode. I think we're doing it again. So I think we can just air our laundry, just get that out, put that behind us. Okay,
Yeah.
That was a big miss. But I still stand by the underlying analysis, even if it was based on something totally wrong. Keep this in. Don't edit this part out. Just, hey, forthcoming with what we know and what we really, really don't know. And when we screw up, it's not right to, like, go back and try to hide it. Okay, like, we rail against this on this program, rail against anyone who does that. It's really difficult to do that, to stare like what I consider to be. If you go back and watch it, you'll see it. Stare just like what I consider to be a big mistake in the face. Look it down and just acknowledge it. And adjust, and that's, we're kind of figuring this out as we go. But it was, I think, a big mistake. Okay, so that's behind us. All that said, I do stand by, as strange as it might sound, the fundamental analysis. Like, what I learned over, like, the past month is still valid, and, like, I think I've become more wiser politically. Like, we're not political analysts necessarily, but this is kind of a step to be a little bit better at it. That's all I'll say. Fair? Is that fair? Like, come next year, I just feel like I have a better understanding of what's going on behind the scenes.
Trying to gloss over it so much, Luke. I don't see how it's an issue really at all. It's the whole point is that there's a pivotal moment that they prioritized over the people. Call it a midterm, call it these other high-profile elections. It's all the same thing. We're just playing with labels here. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you.
Luke, master political analyst.
Don't know when the midterms are. All right. We can move on.
We could make a T-shirt out of that. Luke's predictions. Doesn't know when the midterms are. Still right anyway.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead, Joe. Take it away.
As I'm sure everyone's probably pretty well aware at this point, the shutdown ended earlier this week. It formally ended whenever Trump signed in Bill H.R. 5371 into law. Now, Luke, you were 1 week off, but again, I think, you're still pretty dead on there right after the midterms, right?
A year and a week off, yeah.
All right, so here's what we do best. Going to a .gov website and with a magnifying glass to the size 6 font.
That's right. Where else but here?
All right, so this is it. Continuing Appropriations Extensions Act 2026, HR 5371. Pretty exciting. If we just take a brief look right here at the top, second page here as the text begins, such amounts as may be necessary at a rate for operations as provided in applicable Appropriations Act for the fiscal year 2025 are hereby appropriated, and on we go for about 150 pages. Translation, we're just extending last year's funding. Really, no major changes. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that it really doesn't even extend it that long. They extend this funding till January 30th, 2026, and I think there's other pieces that go all the way to the end of fiscal year 26, but there's some big pieces in there that they extended for the massive period of time of about 2.5 months. So again, this is pretty plain, very temporary. It's more of a kind of keep the lights on kind of bill. Now, Luke, the main part of your argument, though, is that why did all this occur the way that it did, right? Well, Republicans control all three chambers, including the House and the Senate. But with the filibuster, they have to get at least 60 votes in the Senate to pass one of these things. Republicans are a few short of that, effectively giving the Democrats the power to block anything. And if you block these continuing funding bills, the government shuts down. So why did they do that? Chuck Schumer originally refused the initial continuing resolution bill because it was pretty much the same, keep the lights on, but there were a couple smaller things from the Republicans that they wanted in the bill that they added in there. So including they added more funds for ICE. That's a very contentious topic at the moment. They added around $13 billion in cuts for non-defense programs and some other smaller policy rider things, some foreign aid offsets, some IRS funding restrictions. Really, really exciting stuff. So in the end, though, he said it was a partisan continuing resolution, even though these additions were very small in relation to the whole bill. But nonetheless, he's got to call it something. He calls it very partisan. And then finally, the main point that he held up most of the time as the core reason why the Democrats wouldn't move forward is that he wanted to extend some of the tax credits from Affordable Care Act premiums. That was really his bottom line. So what was his motivation in all that? So Luke, as you outlined to us last week, going through Joe Manchin's book, Dead Center, the underlying thesis was Chuck Schumer, through his experience, he wasn't interested in persuasion or debating the policy. He just wanted spectacle. He just wanted drama. It was all political theater. Given this most recent episode, does it support that view? And honestly, Luke, cover your ears, but more than I expected. So Chuck Schumer put on this big spectacle, citing that this bill needed to have these additional support related to health care. But in the end, the Democrats ended up accepting something that did not include any of those things. And so why was that? And to me, and this is why I think Luke is right here, it's that timing is everything. No matter what you call these elections, these were high-profile elections. The Democrats basically wanted a high-profile event, something simple that they could point to voters. Republicans are in charge. The government shut down. Look at how terrible they are. Vote for us instead. And lo and behold, there were big wins for the Democrats. And of course, in New York City, a Democratic Socialist won. So that's a pretty big win for the Democrats, in my opinion. As soon as they got that, a few days later, we're back open again.
Yeah, I mean, I think Schumer's job is just to win elections. I think that's kind of why he's where he is. And I guess I didn't really appreciate just how far the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, extend a lot further beyond just Congress. It's also down to the governors. So it's got fingers sort of at the governor level and then also at the mayor level. It's kind of weird if you think about it like that it goes all the way, it goes that deep. There's nothing else. I mean, even how many independents or something or non-Republican, non-Democrats are sort of running at even just a city level, a state level.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's all a game of communications and all rolls up to this two-party system.
Yeah, perception. Another thing, another quote kind of from that Joe Manchin book that kept coming up is that in politics, perception is everything. Perception is more important than reality.
Right. So even as we laid it out there, kind of logically so, it seems that the Democrats took the action to shut down the government, but it doesn't really matter. If you can tell voters Republicans are in charge, everyone knows that, government shut down, that's a really easy case to make.
Yeah, I think that was the calculation, and definitely if you read and that message was just sent out over and over again, how because they have the trifecta, it's their fault. And then sort of the other sly, comment and response where it was always after it was opened up, it's like, well, I don't understand how could it be called a Republican shutdown, and yet Democrats are like making demands and stuff like that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Or like that they were blamed for having opened it. Why would like the Democrats quote unquote gave in, then it's open? Why is it a Republican shutdown? Stuff like that. And then like this kind of like finger pointing high school. It's not even like high school level. We're talking like middle school level finger pointing that's going back and forth.
Theater, Luke. High school theater.
Yeah. But, I guess to that point, kind of if when the dust settles, like, did it work? And if you look at it, a lot of people afterwards kind of would say, we, kept it shut down. We held the line. We as Democrats held the line for so long, and then we didn't get anything in return. You could say that you won the major elections that were going on right now. So you did get what kind of you wanted. They wouldn't probably admit that, but in a way, it was a victory. I mean, you want to put blue asses in seats, and in that sense, it worked. Again, this is not at the Congress level, but still.
But their stated intention was something completely different than what it seems it really was.
I mean, I think so. And like one of the things I was thinking about is like if this were a successful and useful tactic, this is kind of a big thing that I left out of the video, although I probably should have put it in there, which is like, why don't I necessarily believe it at face value as to like why the rationale is like we want to fight for Medicare for everyone and all that. Because if this was a successful tactic, it would happen every year, like clockwork. If this was a way for the minority party to get whatever they wanted, we would see this every year.
Well,
we don't.
They've been happening with increasing frequency over the past decade. I would say certainly.
Maybe. I don't think the Republicans did it once under Biden. Certainly for this length, they're definitely getting longer. I think the last long one was like 30 some odd days or something. That was in 2018. And then again, this time, this was like 40 something days. Whereas before there would like be a day, 2 days, a week, something like that.
There were multiple under Trump, including the previous longest one at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think so far this is in my interpretation, this is a tactic that the Dems are more willing to pull.
It looks like it worked, so why not stick with it? But either way, Democrats or Republicans, just seeing the tactic played out kind of this brazenly, it's enough to make anyone pretty cynical.
Yep, and I said as much. But I think the analysis underwriting is accurate. That's my current framework. And because it had some predictive power, I think, then it's something that, lends more weight to it. I think a measure of a model is how good it predicts stuff. That's it. That's where the tests come. And if you can't predict anything, sometimes you'll ask people just generally about like, oh, well, what do you think will happen about such and such? And they kind of scoff. Like the thought of being able to predict something is so outrageous. So that just means you really don't understand, or there is no underlying understanding there. It's not very deep. Anyway, I think it has some predictive capabilities, this sort of framework. So I'm going to kind of stick with it. Again, even though I got one of the kind of basic things I think not quite lined up, to say it mildly. Ultimately, I think that's how it works.
A lot of the stuff only goes until January 30th, but I think the rest of it is fiscal year 26, which is the same time, I think, September 30th. So we might have, it's going to be really interesting to see at that time. This could be the exact same thing. If that happens, like, you're going to be even more right, Luke.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in 26, just to see if I can't apply this kind of a similar framework to a proper midterm. But we'll see. I think a couple things need to align. There definitely needs to be the I think there's the real reason, and then there is the brochure, kind of what's on the brochure. And if there's something that's pretty strong, kind of brochure item that they can put up, they'll probably try it, because I think it is an effective tactic, as long as you have something to point to as the noble reason and then the actual reason. Again, this sounds super
Perception
cynical.
is everything.
Perception's everything. Yeah.
But that's the point. Your cynicism, that then launched your next idea, your new political party.
Which one did you like? Did you like the Unshackled? Because that kind of implies everyone else is shackled up. Or there's like the American Party. Obviously, that name's kind of already trademarked. The Sunshine Party. I mean, I don't know. I was just kind of having fun with it at the end here, or it's one of those things where it's like, what can you really do? You can just kind of talk about it. But those are like my big issues. I want to see a third party. I think it'd be super important. I want to see, somebody address the debt. That's like, number one. And then number three, arguably, is transparency.
So those were the big points that I was thinking about right after I watched the video. So I started thinking up, well, I'm feeling pretty cynical too, but are there any bright spots here? And I really think there are. And so outside of Congress, I would argue the executive branch was really not involved with this whole shutdown debacle this time. In fact, Trump was out there doing his job the whole time. He was working for the American people. So some of the big things that he accomplished, he secured the Gaza ceasefire. I don't think anyone thought that he was really going to be able to do that, and it's held now for just over a month. He went on this big East Asia diplomatic tour, meeting with the new prime minister in Japan, South Korea, and went to Malaysia as well. He really reaffirmed the U.S.'s backing of these countries, and I think by any interpretation, they were very positive outcomes. And then finally, ahead of time, we had new brinkmanship in the China trade saga, where Trump is going to put a 100% tariff on all of those goods come November 1st. But ahead of time, he made more progress on that, and it continues to evolve right now. So perhaps you could call that just kind of kicking the can down the road further, but it certainly didn't get worse in the way that a lot of people maybe thought it would. So all in all, really, to me, none of this is theatrical. This is real stuff. This is real foreign policy actions that, in my opinion, reflect well on America.
I think there was one thing that Trump did that was somewhat theatrical, and that was the threat or the push to remove the filibuster. Remember that, kind of at the tail end of it?
Oh, I don't.
And even I think in the kind of recent episode of the All In podcast, they had David Sachs up there arguing for why you should remove a filibuster. And again, this is something that Joe Manchin wrote, devoted an entire chapter to why you shouldn't do this. He talked about how, George Washington described the House side of it as a very hot cup. But then when a bill gets to, very hot and chaotic, everyone's fighting and screaming with each other, hot cup. But then when it gets to the Senate, that's the saucer. That's when things kind of cool down and they can properly have a discussion. The whole spirit of the Senate, and kind of more broadly, the whole spirit of kind of how the legislative process is supposed to work, how democracy is supposed to work, is happened in the Senate. And if you lose that, if you just make it a pure majority and there is no more negotiation anymore, then you've lost a huge core point. I think he makes a really strong point. He calls it the nuclear option. But Trump's up there saying get rid of the filibuster, and they had David Sachs repeating the same thing. The argument went something like, well, that when the Democrats get back into power, they're going to remove the filibuster once they get 51 votes there, and they're able to change the Senate rules, because I think that's all it is. It's a rule.
The Democrats tried to do that.
They tried to do it, exactly. Yeah, that's what they covered. That's what I mentioned. They tried to do it in 2022, and thank goodness for Manchin and Sinema, the two Democratic senators and then all the Republicans who said no. But I think that might, if you want to have kind of an interesting take, if kind of look at it this way, is maybe Trump and maybe David Sachs was trying to give them an off ramp by saying like, okay, look, they're in the Dems are in pretty deep at this point. They need an off ramp. They need some way to kind of save face and say, we are going to put the country first. The Republicans are now threatening to remove the filibuster if we do not reopen the government. So for the sake of the country, and we want to keep the filibuster, we will back down. We will be the responsible party and back down, and point to the filibuster. I don't know how much of that like verbiage is out there. The fact that they threatened this, so we backed off. I don't know, but it's kind of one. I don't know really how much Trump really meant it to legitimately get rid of the filibuster, or David Sachs, by that matter, if they were just, like I said, theater. But anyway, one kind of perspective. I thought that was theatrical.
Going on to the second point of your idea for the new political party, Luke.
Yeah, I guess it has to be sunshine, right? Because white, it's the only color you got left. Red and blue are already taken, so you got to go white. And then it's like, well, sunshine's white. So
that's good.
Sunshine party.
Sunshine party.
Sounds a little dainty.
I'm from the Sunshine Party.
Yeah, I represent the Sunshine Party. What about it? Are you going to join? I think we've got 2 members. I think my sister, shout out. I think she's part of the Sunshine Party. We got another one. 3 nice. Strong.
What's the logo?
What do you want, Joe? I mean, you got a pin, and I guess you got a big sun.
Just like a cartoon sun with a big smiley face.
We're still working on it. I mean, if you look back, I thought, I had the Grok AI or whatever come up with some ideas for like the sort of the white eagle and then like the chain above it that snapped. I thought that looks pretty cool. I could rock that one.
I like the sunshine.
Yeah, you want to go
the sunshine? Dainty sunshine.
Yeah. The reason why, the other half of the shackled part is really, that's how I see debt. I just see like this, if there's $1 trillion going out the door, literally $1 trillion every year to nothing. It's just thrown out the window. It's just going to interest payments. It's going to stuff we already spent. Like, imagine if you had that trillion, like what you could do with it. That's a huge weight. That's how I view to see just the dead weight that we are dragging around, and we got to get rid of it. We got to break that shackle. That's one. And it's not even on us. It's on us, but it's like on our kids too. This is the kind of stuff that just drags you down. You just don't have the fiscal space anymore. Some calamity could happen and you just can't pay for it. You're just gradually weakening the country, and eventually something bad's going to happen, and you're not going to have the future resources. That's what debt is. You're not going to have any more future resources to pull forward into the present and fix it. So it's nuts, but that's one thing. And then the other thing you want to deshackle yourself from is this 2-party system. And then the third thing, admittedly, this is where the shackle metaphor totally falls apart, because you're just talking about transparency. Like, what are we going to say? Deshackle ourselves from opacity? Like, what are you going to say? Anyway, man, but like in practice, like what that would actually mean, I just want uncomfortable transparency. That would be like number one. It would just be, I would have like a Teams meeting open all the time to my office, and anyone I met everyone that walked in through my door would be live on air. People like listening to the conversation like happen. If these like backdoor dealings, it's like, look, the public is my boss. The people is right here. I have my phone on got my phone, just put it down in front of you. It's live. Host like X spaces all day. If you want to talk to me, the people can listen. And you can just you make it so that you do it so often and just have it be so regular that people think that it would be weird that it didn't exist. The fact that you're kind of being cheated by all the other representatives that are not doing this, that are not being fully transparent, that don't at the end of the day get in front and relay to their boss, again, the American people, what they talked about that day, what happened that day. Sending out, questions throughout the day on X, for instance. Hosting podcasts. And
just being social.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, right. And just being forthcoming with kind of what they're thinking, how they're thinking about it. And to the point where it's uncomfortable, to the point where uncomfortable for for whoever's in the seat. But yeah, the sunlight, best disinfectant, and all that stuff.
I think we're really seeing that, to be perfectly honest, with the current executive branch. I mean, so obviously, you've got the Twitter feed, which is just constant. A lot of it's a little bit silly, but Trump is never lying about anything. Everything that he posts, it's not it lines up with his actions that he carries out or tries to carry out. And there's just too much information out there, too many posts that he puts out there to consistently craft some synthetic image that he's trying to uphold. It's all him. He's there. And then a little more officially too, on the phones out kind of thing all the time, the White House YouTube page, nearly every day there's like hours of raw, uncut, live streamed footage of events that he goes to, meetings with foreign leaders, lunches, cabinet meetings, speeches he gives, all kinds of different events, celebrations over holidays. It's pretty intense, and it's hours all the time, and it's completely uncut too. One of the cool things I saw actually, recently during that UN speech, Trump got cut off like a couple times from like hecklers in the audience. And I watched it on like, one of the news channels first, and it was seamless. But I watched the White House one, and it's like the camera quality is a little lower. There's not all those logos on the screen. There's not an anchor, trying to talk to you about it. It's just the camera unmoving, looking at him, capturing all the awkward moments as well. So to me, it's like that's pretty raw and transparent. Certainly the most that we've ever seen. In our lifetimes. You look at even just the previous president. You wouldn't see him for months at a time, like at all. Whereas,
well, okay, I take your point about him being more transparent. I think Biden was definitely a unique situation, though. And that kind of harkens back to that first book I read, which didn't really help so much for this prediction thing, but Original Sin, which showed like the cover up of Biden. That was also super fascinating. I would say to the viewers out there, don't bother reading it. It's a great book. You don't need to spend money to read it. What the Congress or they published the report that's like almost the same length of a book. It's like 100 some odd pages, I think, of just that single text. That also went into try to uncovering, I think they're calling it like the auto pen report or something, where they were trying to see exactly how much of the cover up and what happened and stuff. The difference between the congressional report and then what the journalists could put together is that Congress, whoever wrote that report, can actually depose people. They're like depositions. Journalists can't obviously do that. So I'd say don't bother reading on. You don't have to. It's a good book. It's okay. It's pretty good. But I would just look at the free PDF congressional report on the auto pen thing, and that just shows exactly sort of where the cover up thing and all that happened. Anyway, that's just a long way of saying that, like, okay, yes.
What did it say?
So I just kind of started reading it. I didn't read the entire thing. But one of the bigger takeaways is they're starting to question, how many of these they were pointing to some of his pardons. They're not even sure that some of these pardons that were given, there's no like documented proof that Biden actually agreed with it. They have a signature.
Even knew about it,
or like agreed to it. Could have just been his staff. But that's kind of a theme going on here. The amount of information that the president was getting was not perfect. It was getting filtered, basically, they think. Now, I learned that from the On Biden or the Original Sin book. But anyway, that whole thing's like, again, also super interesting, but for different reasons. Just like the power that staff have. I mean, they're extremely reliant, obviously, Trump, any president or whatever, is extremely reliant on like the thousands and thousands of people that work for him, obviously. And there's room for manipulation there. So you can do, whoever is sitting in the sunshine seat, whoever the representative is just to try to be like, there's nowhere that I'm hiding. That would just, that's I don't know, man. You just got to consider it also as public service. You just got to blow the lid open about what the incentives really are. And I would imagine if someone's in there, like a Joe Manchin or whatever, is like getting in there and can just be forthcoming with being like, look, these are the forces that I see at play here. Say, like, if there's some other senator or something that's, voting a certain way, you can like actually try to sit him down and talk to him, like what the rationale is. And if it doesn't come back to kind of, money, fundraising, that's where another thing that, that Joe Manchin book, it's just like everything is about fundraising now. Everything's about like the next election. It's like you will be successful in in one of the parties if you're able to raise a lot of money, if you're able to get voters out. And what that means is you always are hearkening towards the extremes. Because they're the ones who are the most politically involved. They're the ones who like show up to vote. They're the ones who donate. And so that's kind of who you pander to. That also works kind of at companies. So the big, one of the things that I highlighted in that video that I did, and I didn't put any attention to it, but it had to do with a Supreme Court decision that basically said that companies were individuals and they could donate like an unlimited amount. And Joe Manchin described that to being one of like the biggest problems, is the fact that companies can now donate to fundraisers. I didn't unpack that in that video at all. I just like flashed open that Supreme Court decision. But Joe Manchin said that was a huge deal. And so it was like, who's giving the candidates or the parties money? What kind of discussions are happening between kind of this federal level of the Congress and then the governors and the mayors? Like, what's up with that? Like, how separate are they? It's I just don't know, man. Like, obviously I don't know what's going on. If and I try to just position myself as just someone who's like, seeing this really important thing. It's thrown in our face all the time, but I don't understand it. I'd like to. And if there was like a sunshine representative who would go in there, I would listen to those meetings. I'd be like, what is going on? Debt, three-party system, transparency, sunshine. That's the sunshine position. That's what I would want to see. Everything else comes after. You got to get your finances in order. And our finances are not in order. You don't have your finances in order, all this other stuff doesn't happen. The gears don't turn.
Well, I'm excited to see you build this out here, Luke.
I think we can talk about it. I think we should have fun with it. See where it goes. See if anyone, there's got to be, I'm sure we can find some corner of the internet that sort of shares the same views as we do. And then we can just kind of start the conversation. Just start talking about it. Yeah. These last two episodes have been all about kind of more politics focused, although we are supposed to focus on finance. So at least there is a little bit of overlap between debt and politics.
A little
That's
bit,
like the only thing I care about.
Yeah. I got to admit, I'm feeling pretty out of my element here.
Yeah, me too. So I think we should go back to finance next week. I'll take us there next week. But it was a fun little foray.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Chinese deflation and data that's been coming out or hasn't been coming out, but we had to shutdown ended. That's hopefully that headline alone will get us some clicks. All right, thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Another episode, Root of All Evil podcast. I'm Joe.
I'm Luke.
And we'll see you next time.